Chucky Hepburn and Reyne Smith both make history in Louisville's dominant win on the road at SMU.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this special Thursday evening episode of the Locked On, the Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. The Louisville Cardinals went to Dallas on Tuesday and recorded a dominant, and I mean dominant, 98-73 victory over the SMU Mustangs. Chucky Hepburn and Reyne Smith both made history in their own respective ways. We'll discuss their performances and their records, the overall victory for the Cardinals, and how not only in this performance, but during this 9-game winning streak, Louisville continues to prove themselves as one of the top teams in the ACC. There's a lot of great stuff to talk about from Tuesday night's game. And I mentioned before the game, it was on the preview episode and even the episode on Monday, that I wasn't going to be in town on Tuesday through Thursday, and that I was going to have to skip Wednesday and not record a show on Wednesday, but have a show on Thursday. I know I told you all that, but I still do feel bad because I like to have, a show out right after the game. But I was able to host a Twitter space, and a lot of people hopped on that, and just good vibes all around. It's awesome to see this team playing well, but it's also really fantastic to see the fan base having fun too. You look at this performance, and there is no shortage of storylines. You could talk about the dominant ACC win, just the overall balanced attack from the Cardinals, a blowout win on the road against a conference opponent. But all those sort of pale in comparison to the two records that were set on Tuesday night, both single game records for the Cardinals. Reyne Smith hits 10 3-pointers, surpassing Taekwon Dean in a record that stood for over a decade. And Chucky Hepburn recorded 16 assists, which surpassed Francisco Garcia, who also held that record for over a decade. And I think that, both of these players have been pivotal for this university, for this team. You could argue the two most valuable players on the team thus far this season. And that's no disrespect to any of the other guys. It's just a testament to how well Chucky Hepburn has played and how well Reyne Smith has played. Chucky had 9 assists going into halftime. And admittedly, I didn't really know what the record was, but I was thinking to myself when I was watching it, it's got to be somewhat around that number. Like Chucky has to be getting close. And it was put out shortly after. I forget who tweeted it out, but I mean, it's pretty accessible knowledge that it was 15. And same goes with Reyne Smith. I mean, he was making some early shots, and he got up to the point to where, he was in that 6 to 7 range. And I looked the record up, and I was like, man, Taekwon Dean has the record, and it's 9, and Reyne Smith is right there. I will say that, both of these records were set during the 2003-2004 season by obviously some Louisville legends. Taekwon Dean set the 3-point record in December of that season, and then just a month later in January is when Francisco Garcia had 15 assists in a single game. Something that's also pretty interesting to point out, this was the most assists by an ACC team since the 2016-2017 season. So not only is this greatness in Louisville program history, but it also holds a ton of significance in conference play as well, because we've gone almost a decade without getting to that 16 assist number. And some of these passes that Chucky was making in this game, I mean, it was incredible. He played 38 minutes, had 13 points, 3 of 8 from the field, 3 of 7 from three-point line, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. And actually, it was sort of his shot making early on that kind of caught my eye, because Chucky had kind of struggled with efficiency from behind the arc, and he made a couple of early shots. I'm like, man, this could be a game where he goes for 30. But he was very unselfish with the basketball, facilitating the ball and getting it to where it needed to be. I tweeted this out. Shout out to Terrence Oglesby for tweeting this out, and I shared it as well. We're like 2 days beyond the game, and I still have no clue how Chucky Hepburn threw that ball cross court to the corner to Reyne Smith, and Smith was able to make one of his 10 threes on the night. Now, one thing that the post does highlight is how important Abubakar Traore's screens that he set were in getting Reyne those open shots. But Chucky made that pass. He was right on the bend of the three-point line, and he just threw a pass overhead. I was like, there's no way that's getting through. And it got through perfectly in the shooting pocket for Reyne Smith, and he was able to hit for him an easy shot. And I think that just goes to a testament to how solid Chucky Hepburn's court vision is. Like, you talk about his ability to just lead this offense, and it is a product of his ability to see the floor well, understand what's going to happen before it actually happens. Also a testament to Pat Kelsey and Coach Cassidy for drawing up this offense. You've seen a couple of clips get shared on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, of Louisville's motion offense, and it is extremely intricate. It features a lot of delayed screens, a lot of delayed movement, a lot of movement at one time. And that's what we talked about, is that there's a lot of inspiration from, European basketball, in that there's so much movement, and it's not just one player, it's everyone, and everyone's moving without the ball. And it's not really an offense that you can pick up right away. It was going to take some time for the team to learn. And Chucky Hepburn, you can just see, is getting more and more comfortable. I mean, I'm talking about the lobs to James Scott, and so many more just absolutely brilliant plays from the Cardinals point guard. He only had 2 turnovers. So an 8 assist to turnover ratio it's wild. It's wild to say. He just had a fantastic performance, and shout out to him, because he deserves this. He's been sort of, the leader on the court for the Cardinals. Louisville goes as Chucky Hepburn goes. So another guy that has been, a pivotal player in this rotation is Reyne Smith. And Reyne Smith has been one of the best three-point shooters in the country. And we've seen that coming into the season. And he was 10 of 18 on the road at SMU, 10 of 17 from three-point land. He shot 17 three-pointers, and he was over 50% from three. Like, I don't think people realize that, like, 59%, that is nuts. Now, it would be different if this was like a one-time thing, but you look at his three-point numbers all throughout the season. He's made 5 three-pointers, 7 three-pointers, 6 three-pointers. Like, he only has one game this year where he's only made 1 three-pointer. Like, he's made at least 2 every single game since then. It's just incredible to see how he's been able to shoot the ball at a high rate. In this game against SMU, first half, I mean, you're talking about making shots from distance, NBA level threes. He had a logo 3 to where he shot from basically just the right inside the logo, and I'm like, there's no way. Okay. Off balance three-pointers, dribbling into the three-pointers, stepping into them, coming off motion, catch and shoot. You're going to get caught up in the numbers and the shots going in, but as with every three-point shooter, really good three-point shooter, what gets, I won't say lost, but underappreciated is just the movement and understanding, spacing within the offense. And I credit Kelsey and the coaching staff a lot for, game planning this and making sure you open pockets up to get him some shots. And there were some designed plays out of timeouts to get him open shots, and he just made those shots. He had 30 points. He led all scorers on Tuesday evening, and it really wasn't even close. So being able to break a record that Taekwon Dean set in December of 2003 was really nice. I mean, this is, and I know that some people don't like to talk about, well, you can't really say a player that has played one season can be one of the greatest shooters in Louisville history, but I think it's like him and Taekwon Dean, man. Reyne Smith is doing something unprecedented. We mentioned his three-point shooting. The numbers. He is shooting, what's the attempts number here? 9.6 three-pointers a game. That's insane numbers. It's 1.5 over his career high. And he's averaging a career high in percentage of 40.8. He's one of the best shooters in the country. He's one of the best shooters in program history. Look, I know we like to cling on to nostalgia and sometimes recency bias. I don't want to be a victim of the moment, but what Reyne Smith is doing this season, he's got 74 three-pointers made, and we still have 11 regular season games to go. For reference, and no disrespect to Ryan McMahon, this is just for reference, Ryan McMahon had 68 in his highest season, is what I read. Again, Ryan McMahon was a fantastic shooter, and that's not meant to discredit what Ryan ever did. It's just showing you how insane what Reyne Smith is doing. It's incredible. And it sort of shines over the fact that Louisville won this game by over 20 points on the road in a game in which they weren't even favored to win, but huge records were set. But speaking of the game itself, Louisville was in command for almost the entirety of this matchup. They dominated the Mustangs. And we'll break it down when we come back on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. That's where TalkSpace comes in. TalkSpace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With TalkSpace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your own home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, TalkSpace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with TalkSpace when you go to TalkSpace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter the promo code SPACE80. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to TalkSpace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter the promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's TalkSpace.com/LockedOnCollege using the promo code SPACE80. Cardinal fans, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Also, another heads up, a new Locked On ACC squad episode has dropped on the Locked On Louisville YouTube page. I made it a point of emphasis of mentioning on the show and in the comments. It's not an episode that I publish, like the Locked On Podcast Network publishes them on every feed and video page of every single Locked On ACC school. Every Locked On ACC's YouTube page will get a Locked On ACC video, a Locked On ACC squad video. All I'm saying is give it a chance. If it says ACC squad in the video title, it means that I may or may not be on it. Traveling has been an issue lately, so I haven't been on a lot lately. I can't always say that Louisville will or will not be discussed, but it's nice to get some ACC talk. So just give it a chance. If not, that's okay. Just please skip over the videos. So sorry for going on that tangent. Louisville 98, SMU 73. It was a 25-point game. SMU made it, I won't say interesting, in the second half. Louisville only outscored the Mustangs by 2 points in the second half. But it wasn't enough. for Andy Enfield's team because the Cardinals held a 50-27 lead at the end of the first half. It was sort of went back and forth for the first couple of minutes in this game, and then Louisville was able to make some big-time shots. They played really, really good defense, and they were able to get out to a lead. Now, one thing that I wanted to see is that, okay, the Cardinals have a double-digit lead. Can they hold on to that lead? Because we've seen some of the offensive lulls that they've gone through at different points this season. Clemson being one of them. Both Virginia games. And I wanted to see, you're playing on the road against, statistically, coming into this matchup, the top ACC offense. One of the most efficient offenses in the country and the most efficient offense in the ACC. And one of the best three-point shooting offenses in the ACC and the country. So you get what I'm saying. Really good offense that you're playing. I mentioned that I really didn't know how good the Mustangs were because, like Pittsburgh, they had beat the teams they were supposed to beat and weren't really beating the teams that would give them those big resume wins. But I still felt that with Louisville being a 1.5-point underdog in this game, the last game in which they're theoretically supposed to potentially lose, I still think that SMU is a good team, even after what Louisville did to them. And you saw a little bit of that in the second half. Now, the Cardinals with a 23-point halftime lead, I will say sometimes it's hard to keep those leads because you start to take your foot off the gas a little bit. When you're dominating a team the entirety, basically let's call it the entirety of the game almost, it's kind of hard to stay engaged. But Louisville was able to stay focused up until SMU went on a little bit of a run in the middle portion of the second half. They cut the lead to 17. And I was thinking to myself, okay, let's wake back up. Let's push this game out further and let's get a win. Let's not only get a win, but let's get a dominant win. And Reyne Smith hit a couple of big time shots as Reyne Smith did. And the rest is history. I do think it's funny that you could tell in the TV timeout. Shout out to Mike Rutherford for sharing this tidbit on Twitter. He basically said, he's like, you can just kind of tell, now paraphrasing here, you can tell that like Reyne Smith was made aware of the fact that he was 1 3-pointer away from breaking the record when he made the one. He was like, he did like a double pump. There was a guy in his face and he said, I'm on fire, and just drained the shot. And I was like, okay, it's one of those nights. James Scott hit a 3-pointer, his only 3-pointer of the season so far. 1 for 1, 100%. It was just really nice to see Louisville play the way that they did. They shot 46% from the field, 45% from three, made 19 3-pointers, and 17 and 19 from the free throw line, 90% there. I mentioned that Louisville was going to have to play some really good offense against SMU because the Mustangs put up points. They're not the greatest defensive team, but they do put up points. And one thing that Louisville's continually proving, not only to myself, but to the fan base and to the rest of the country and conference, is that they're improving more and more defensively. And we talked about this trend that the Cardinals are making life miserable for opposing number one scoring options. They did it for RJ Davis. They did it for JJ Starling. A couple of games ago, they did it for Isaac McNeely. The list goes on. And then you look at this game against SMU when Boopy Miller, the starting one of the starting guards, number one scoring option on the team. In 23 minutes, he played the lowest amount of minutes of any starter for Andy Enfield's team. He was 2 of 12 from the field. Made a 3-pointer and hit 2 free throws. He had 7 points. 7 points in this game. And he was averaging, close to 15 before this. So being able to hold the number one scoring option on a team to well below their average, it's becoming a welcomed trend for the squad. And Louisville winning 9 straight games, a lot of that can be contributed to like 15 to 20 different reasons, like smaller reasons forming the foundation for what we're seeing. It's like, the roots of a tree. The tree is the 9-game winning streak. And then under that, you have Reyne Smith, 3-point shooting. You have Chucky Hepburn's leadership. You have Javon Hadley's reliability. You have Terrence Edwards' defensive versatility. James Scott making up or not making up, but just improving throughout the season. Good defense on the number one scoring option, limiting offensive rebounds, limiting turnovers. Like there's so many different, and then getting comfortable playing with one another. Like you're seeing this team just continue to gel. And it's such an awesome sight to see because no one expected this. Even myself, and I mentioned it on air when I was with Locked On college basketball host Isaac Shade. He had me predict Louisville's record before the season. I said 21-10, top 4 finish in the ACC. Cason Pryor and Corin Johnson are out for the year and have been for the majority of the season. And the team is 15-5, and they're tied for second in the conference right now with the record. And I think throughout this month of January, with each and every game, you're starting to see, or not starting, you're continuing to see Louisville just over and over proving themselves. We've been asking, okay, how long is this winning streak going to go on for? And they keep pushing it further and further. And now it's at 9 games. You're 7-0 or 7-0 in the month of January with the game against Wake Forest on Tuesday. But you've passed a bunch of critical tests, in my opinion. And you're proving that you're one of the best teams in the ACC, potentially the second best team for certain. And we'll discuss when we come back on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The energy, excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. If you are interested in going to any of the conference championship games or potentially the Super Bowl, Gametime makes it even easier to create unforgettable moments with their new feature, Gametime Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, being there. I use Gametime Picks to grab tickets to the most recent game for the Louisville-Virginia contest. Seeing Louisville defeat Virginia by double digits never gets old, but you can get tickets to the upcoming matchup against Wake Forest on Gametime. I found a super deal that gave me incredible value for amazing seats last game, and I hope to find those next game as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Nine straight wins for the Louisville Cardinals, continuing to build momentum through the season. The Cardinals are ranked 25th. They only have one game this week. They have a much-deserved week off to where they can heal up and get ready to conclude the month of January with a matchup against Wake Forest. And this month was going to tell me a lot about this team because you had your major tests. Now, you play more road games in February, but it's pretty clear that this team plays its best ball away from the KFC Yum Center for whatever reason. But the quality of team that you play in January is better than in February. So when you have matchups against North Carolina, 2 against Virginia, Clemson, at Pittsburgh, at SMU, I figured, we were going to learn a lot about this team. And I wanted to lose no more, or put it this way, I didn't want to lose any games, but I didn't want the team to lose any more than 2 wins. Or I'm sorry, 2 losses. My gosh, I'm all over the place. But I had to rephrase that because you're like, oh, you want us to lose? No. I didn't want the team to lose more than 2 games. And when you start out with a win against North Carolina, you're like, okay, that's pretty solid. And then you beat Virginia twice, you beat Clemson, you beat Pittsburgh, you beat Syracuse, and you beat SMU. And, oh, by the way, only one of those games was by single digits, a road game at Pittsburgh. You kind of do a double take, and you're like, wow, okay. So not only is this team winning, but they're doing it emphatically. And throughout this month, it has been a campaign. Now, obviously, this might not necessarily be at the forefront of their mind, but it's been a month that has just proved to the entire conference that, yeah, Duke is right where they are. We know that. They're 8-0 in conference play. They're 16-2. They haven't lost since playing Kansas back in, November or so. They're legit. But you better be talking about Louisville as well, is what Louisville's telling you. Now, Clemson is still at 8-1 in conference play, so you could argue that they're the second best team, but as head-to-head would dictate, the Cardinals are right there. They beat Clemson by 10 points, could have beat them by more. And Clemson also hasn't played the schedule that the Cardinals have played. Like, Clemson still has to play Duke and Carolina and at Florida State and at SMU. And I think that, Louisville's in a good spot to be able to clinch that second seed as we get closer and closer to the end of the season. Now, Wake Forest is 7-1. So Tuesday's game has a ton of significance with the Demon Deacons beating North Carolina earlier this week. But the caveat is that Wake Forest plays another game before the Cardinals game. They play against Duke, and that is going to be a real telltale sign for me. I want to see how they play. They're going to host Duke on Saturday at 4:30 Eastern time in Winston-Salem. I want to see how Steve Forbes' team matches up against the Duke Blue Devils, a team that is just playing like an absolute buzzsaw at the moment. But outside of that, you talk about Louisville wanting to get a top 4 finish, right? Currently, they're tied for second. They have a 2.5 game lead over the 3-team party of SMU, Stanford, and North Carolina. They have beaten SMU and North Carolina. They don't play Stanford until the end of the season. And arguably, I would say that the Cardinals, put it this way, I don't think any team has played as tough of an ACC slate as the Cardinals. And with Louisville being 8-1, it's like, okay, we've been through the gauntlet. We went through the fire and we came out on the other side, and we're on a 9-game winning streak. Oh, and by the way, we're blowing these teams out. We're beating almost every team by double digits. So it might seem a little cliche. It might seem a little redundant. Truthfully, I don't care, because I'm not going to apologize for my excitement whatsoever. You know how far we've come if you know where we've been. And Louisville has been at the bottom for the past couple of seasons. And to see this team go on the run that they are, I'm going to be unapologetically very, very loud about my excitement. And I don't give a damn. I don't. I know you all don't either. Well, some do, and those some are the Kentucky fans that listen to every single show of this podcast, and they comment the same things. You can choose multiple choice. A, well, the ACC is just completely down this year. Don't forget that the SEC hasn't won anything of substance in over a decade, and there's only been 2 teams to win a national championship in 2 decades. But I know the ACC makes runs in the tournament, and the SEC is a better regular season team right now, but ACC sucks. Or it's along the lines of, well, Mark Pope's coach of the year. Or you can choose option C, what's behind door number 3, which is, well, Kentucky beat Louisville in Rupp Arena. What does it matter? And then option number 4 is insert sad, redundant response here. But hey, thank you for the viewership, because it's definitely appreciated. And it is what it is. I just had to get that out there. I mean, it doesn't really bother me as much. I know me addressing it might seem like it does. I think it's honestly just kind of funny because usually those comments are like among the first under every video. And it's like, for someone who doesn't care about the University of Louisville that much, you really talk about it and invest your time to listen to the Louisville podcast. But hey, as I always say, whether you're a Louisville fan or not, thank you for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. So that is going to wrap up this Thursday edition of the show. When we come back, it'll probably be on Sunday or Monday. We're going to talk about Nate Ament. What would that commitment mean for Louisville's program? We'll talk about a new football commitment while also previewing the upcoming matchup against Wake Forest. All on the next episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here very soon.